Welcome everybody to another episode of Not Quite Strangers. My name is Valerie Hope. I am your host. And as you know, this podcast is all about bringing two people together who have never met or know each other, hardly know each other, and have a meaningful conversation with the intent of inspiring curiosity, building connection between people. And I'm really out to disrupt the way strangers interact and the way strangers connect. Today is no different. I have these two amazing people. I can't believe they said yes to this, by the way, because I'm also a relative stranger to both of them. But I think that's what makes this even more fun. So I have my guest, Izzy Gesell. Izzy and I go way back to October, perhaps. and also, and the way Izzy and I know each other is because, Izzy, I reached out to you on LinkedIn after watching, I think it was a LinkedIn course, it sounds like, or some live stream where we were talking about humor and business, and it recommended a course that you do. And I was like, I'm not going to take another course. I'm going to reach out to the source. That rhymes. So, and I just sent you a LinkedIn message saying, hey, I think I'd like to know more about what you do and how you do it. And then we had this, I think like half an hour, maybe hour-long conversation.
Yep.
And I said, you want to be on my podcast? And you were like, yay.
Well, yeah, why not? And I think it was the Humor in the Workplace course on LinkedIn Learning. That's probably it, maybe.
I don't even remember what it was, but it moved me so much.
And it stripped me of my Monday evening. So there you go.
There you go. But Izzy, I don't know if you know this, but at the time I invited you, I didn't know who I wanted to have on the podcast with you. I was just like, I know this is a great conversation to have with somebody. I'll mull over who might that person be. And then fast forward like to December. So just a couple months later, I was invited to be a part of a storytelling showcase here in Dallas, Texas, and end up going to the storytelling showcase practice, like a little rehearsal that we had. And Vanessa, you turned to me and you were like, hey, we've met. And I was like, I remember, because we took a Zoom improv class like beginning of 2020 or like spring of 2020, which I didn't remember that was you. So I'm so grateful that you said something. And then we just started chit-chatting there in the little moments that we had. And I was like, oh, Vanessa, you need to be on my podcast. I need you to meet Izzy. And you said yes. So anyway, with that huge, long introduction, I just want to say how grateful I am that the two of you said yes, being on the podcast. And I now want to know why you said yes.
Stage time.
All right. For those that are not in the biz,
well, being on LinkedIn, having your own business, getting to talk, and I like talking to people and meeting people, but the idea to talk to new people and to find kindred spirits and to be invited, and plus it's like as a kid you want to be invited to the party. Yeah, I want, so it's all different kinds of levels of psychological need. And I I'm one of the things about improv is you sort of go yes most of the time, and then you deal with what did I get myself into, and I could deal with it. So
cool. So this was one of those moments. You got stage time and the opportunity to say yes as you would in improv. Have you had any of those, oh, why did I say yes yet?
With you? No.
Uh-huh. No?
You here? No.
Not yet.
No,
okay.
we have 50 minutes. So
there's time. We'll unpack some more stuff. Vanessa, why did you say yes?
Well, I took an improv class with you during like lockdown time frame, and we became friends on Facebook, and I kind of just became a fan of you. So I was watching some of the stuff that you were putting together. I think you had, I can't remember the name of it, but it was some sort of presentation. I think it was at a church.
Mm-hmm.
And you shared the recording of it. And I just thought it was really cool. And you talked about your experience, like growing up, I think in the military, military family.
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff. And I really loved that. And I just really like this idea. So when you asked me to join, I was like, oh yeah, totally. That's so cool. It sounds really rad.
Cool. You're my fan. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And I think so, in the spirit of transparency in this moment, when I didn't want to do this type of I shouldn't say I didn't want to do this type of podcast. I had a podcast prior called Time to Come Alive, where I would do like one-on-one interviews with people who were doing wonderful, inspiring things in their lives. And it was really great. And then I got bored. And then I was just like, I'm done. 100 episodes, that's enough. And I shared with you earlier that the thing that inspired me to do this was out of a conversation where it seemed like people may not be as comfortable connecting with strangers in a meaningful way. And I thought, well, how can I bring that to light? And this is what was born out of it. Now it's been a year and I get restless. So I'm like, I don't know what I want to do now. Do I want to do it again? Do I want to keep doing it? But then I meet cool people like the two of you. And I'm like, of course, I got to keep doing it because there are more people to meet. So, and I'm also secretly hoping that out of this conversation, I'm so glad that you guys are, both improvisation masters and open to it, because I think I want to learn some things for myself to change things up a little bit. What do you change up? Like when you think about improv, well, actually, look, let me start over. There are probably some people listening, and I've shared with people that we were going to have a conversation about improv, and they're like, improv, like improving things? So someone might need a definition before we go any deeper. Who would like to share what is improv and why does it matter?
It's the best way to disappoint your parents. No, just kidding.
Improv.
No.
I don't need the scholarship, Mom. I want to do improv.
It's a style of comedy that's usually live, but sometimes can be recorded. And it's all made up on the spot based off of prompts. Sometimes no prompts, but usually based off of prompts. Sometimes it can be short little games. Sometimes it can be long things. But if you've seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, that's improv and that's short form.
Love it. All right. What would you add, Izzy?
The reason that it's so popular now is that what's happening is that people realize that the training that improvisers go through is relevant to non-theatrical lives. So my work is in a field that I call, and other people call, applied improv. So the idea is that the skills that make improv people successful are relevant to us all. And essentially, it boils down to three things. Improvisers learn to stay in the moment, because what's past is past, the future is unknown. Now is the only time we have. Improvisers understand the difference between acknowledgement and agreement, which is what yes and is. I may not agree with what you say, but I will listen to what you say and acknowledge that I heard you. So even if we disagree, I'll say, you think that, and I think differently. Let's examine the differences. And then the third aspect of this is that improvisers learn to trust process. They suspend judgment about whether things are good or bad in the moment. This is good, I suck, that person's funnier than me, what am I going to think of? What's the best answer? None of that. They just act. And people think improvisers think quicker than most other people. And it's not that they think quickly, is that they act quickly, because they don't have all that self-talk going, what should I do? What's the best, and so forth. So it's the theatrical piece, and that's comedy focused or entertainment focused. And then you go back and you say, well, how do those people learn to do that? And, I'm going to apply that to my life. So there's improv, and then there's applied improv.
I think the thing that really like kind of ding for me in what you shared was this idea of difference between acknowledgement and agreement. I am actually taking it. The two of you have inspired me to continue to explore improv even further. I signed up for a 7-week intro to improv, yes, here in Dallas, and it's live. We meet in person. I've done week 2 at this point in time, or the 2 sessions so far, and I really enjoy it. But I realize how judgmental I am about whether the thing is going the way that it could go. Like, no, they shouldn't have said that. They should have said this, or no, next time I'm going to say that, because like there's all this calculation that's happening in my mind constantly.
And all of that takes you out of the present.
Totally. Although I did find myself, we did a couple of games in our session yesterday in our workshop where we actually had to acknowledge that was happening, right? But same thing, acknowledgement and agreement. I could acknowledge that, oh, my brain really wants to solve this puzzle before it's my turn. And then I could agree to just improvise in the moment, right? Like, okay, I want to say purple. And then my turn comes and I'm like, mule. So that was it was nice to be able to suspend, like acknowledge that the thought was there, but not necessarily have to act in agreement with it, right? I can still just do whatever it was called for. So I'm just curious about your experiences. Like how does improv, how did it grow you, or how has it impacted you?
You know, they say people teach what they need to learn. So
yeah,
I'm a cynical New York guy, sarcastic, judgmental. And when I started taking improv, I was in groups, and I used to do stand-up comedy also. So what I began to see, and I think this is what brought me to the work I do now, which is facilitating using applied improv, I realized that I was able to learn things about myself, because the games themselves have no real world consequence, but the behavior that we use in the games is our true self.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me said, oh, pay attention. And then the other side of that is, the more you practice improv, and people practice not to know the game ending, but to learn the process, you see that it's always about choice. And that's the big lesson for me, is life is always about choice. And you always have choice. I think it's Viktor Frankl's work, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
It's always about choice. At the bottom line, all human beings have a choice. They may not be easy choices, but and improv is always about choice. In fact, there's a game called New Choice.
New Choice?
Have you played it, Vanessa?
Yeah. I love that game.
What is that?
New Choice is you have a scene, and you're playing something, and then a third person goes new choice, and as soon as you say something, they go new choice. You have to have a different answer. So you say you have an interview, a job interview, and one person says, well, why do you want this job? Because I need the money. New choice. Yeah. Why do you want the job, Vanessa?
Because I bought a kangaroo. It's too expensive.
New choice.
Because my wife left me.
New choice.
Because I really like working, and it's all I want to do with my life. I don't want to relax.
Don't want to relax. That's kind of cool. Okay, so I want a new choice now too. Like, how do we play this now? Well,
what I could have the two of you play, and I'll be the new choice. I'll be the. Sometimes it's also called ding, because sometimes people use a bell.
Okay.
But I'll do new choice. So why don't you two have a conversation, and I'll do the new choice. All
right, Vanessa, you kick us off.
I was watching this like thriller series, I guess. I thought I was watching a jamboree session, and there was they were all bears playing banjos at the same time. They were all tiny men dancing on top of really large men. You know, just really tiny, and the men are really large, like giants.
This was something you watched on TV?
Yeah.
This was something that you saw at the park?
New choice.
This is something that they taught you in school?
Yeah. You know, you watch Alice in Wonderland, and you see the little potions for getting huge or getting really tiny. And I mean, they're real.
New choice.
They're not real at all. I'm lying, and I'm I lie a lot. So I'm sorry.
Oh, this is fun. I'm gonna add this to my repertoire. New choice. Okay, so it's one thing, obviously we've staged that, there are some basic premises and rules that you apply. How do you use something like this in your real life? Like when you're walking around the street and talking, obviously, Vanessa, you did not see little men dancing on top of big men, I imagine. But like,
I haven't had those mushrooms for years.
I kind of have an answer or a response to that. I think you kind of touched upon it, like the biggest gift of improv is asking the question, what if? And, like, what if I don't control this? What if I just say the wrong thing and see what happens? What if I'm not perfect? What if I just go with it? What if I let the other person lead? What if we just try something different this time? And if you follow what if, you can follow new things. And it can be really helpful. I personally think even in a work environment where it's so clear who are the people who are so rigid in the way that they think about things and the way that they solve things versus people who are willing to ask what if, instead of immediately going, well, I don't know how that works. I can't visualize it. So no.
Yeah.
Wow.
Vanessa, what you were talking about, what this allows you to do is let go of the need to know the outcome. So what if is just different possibilities, but it also brings you right present. You have no idea where this conversation is going to go.
New choice.
You heard this lesson from your mother many years ago, and you understand that that's the way life really should be. So
new choice.
The Bible says that improv was the 11th commandment, but nobody wanted to play, so they went to 10.
Nicely done. Nicely done, Izzy. I love this premise of what if, this idea of what if, because I do struggle with taking over and controlling some things. I mean, this is my podcast, so I do feel a sense of responsibility that I need to manage things in a way that is comfortable for the guest, that is predictable for the listener, blah, 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 blah. But I'm feeling open this time of my life where I'm like, I'm pretty adaptable and I'm really wanting to stretch myself even further. So I would love for the two of you to come up with some what ifs about our lives. And it doesn't have to be just about the podcast, and it doesn't have to be just about me, but I'm just curious about what are some of the what ifs that are kind of rumbling around in your minds, around your life, around what you see in society, around this moment.
What if all the people who are different political parties got together and played improv games?
But I'm really what comes up for me here is what if they realize that they're actually not that different at all? That the political party piece is just like a shell, right? It's just a shell that covers like people having really meaningful conversations about what's important to them and what's important for the communities they represent or live in. Yeah, I would love that. I think that's your next LinkedIn course, Izzy.
Yeah.
All right, what's another what if?
What if metrics weren't the leading thing for like how you value an employee or how you value a person?
What would you say to that, Izzy? I'm not really sure how to play this. Are we playing it? Are we like just talking about it? Do we just ask the question?
This is the part known as the debrief, the explanation of the game, of the relevance of the game. So the what if, I think what Vanessa was referring to, what I got from it was that what if is the process you use to let go of whether things are good or bad, and it's the make-believe aspect of it, because it's all make-believe. It's within boundaries. I mean, improv has boundaries. The suggestion. So new choice. The boundary is you're going to say something and somebody else is going to go new choice. You don't have no control over that. But once you consent, I mean, that's the other side. There's boundaries and there's consent. Once you're playing, you consent to that because that's the game. So that builds a rapport where we're now in a consent relationship.
Mm.
We have the boundaries, and we were talking about dating. You were talking about dating. It's very relevant to people see boundaries as restrictions, and actually the boundaries in improv is where the creativity comes from. If you have to make a new choice, if that's the boundary, then that's where the creativity comes from.
Boundaries create agreement.
Yeah, rivers can't flow without boundaries, otherwise they'd be all over the place. It's the boundaries that give you direction. Yeah.
So now I'm going to pause and I'm going to ask for a mystery question, because I want to, this is an opportunity. And for those that are listening, tuning into this, I've asked both of my guests to identify a couple of questions that they would want to ask at any point in time during our conversation. Again, as an opportunity for me to stretch myself, reroute the conversation if need be, but then also put some of the responsibility on you all to be as curious as I am about you or about life. So who would like to introduce a question?
You know what? I'll go. When was a time that you helped someone grow, but it was in a way that was really unexpected?
Are you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
When was a time that I helped someone grow and it was really unexpected? I need a little Jeopardy music.
I have one if you want me to. I can jump in if you like, Izzy, and then you can build.
Yeah. Give me another minute.
So what came up for me, Vanessa, your question is, I literally today had a conversation about this with somebody. I'm a leadership coach, and I had a client who was just dealing with some things around inequity in the workplace. And my instinct is to find a better way. Like, okay, there's something that's inequitable, and there's a reaction to that. And I want to maintain the confidentiality of the conversation. So I'm being purposely vague about the details. I'm not trying to be sketchy. I'm just like, I want to respect that individual. But it was interesting because what came up for me was like, I want to fix it, but I want to fix it in a way that feels good and not have to deal with the messiness and the conflict that might come with it, so to speak. What was interesting is staying present in the conversation. I started to realize that it was her values were very clear to her, but because they were not necessarily the same things that I value and at the same level, perhaps, I had a judgment about what that, the fact that she valued fairness versus me valuing relatedness, for example. Let's just put it that way. I was like, oh no, there's got to be a better way. If you had this conversation, perhaps, right, in my head. And what was unexpected, the unexpected learning was for me, actually, but she benefited too, because we were able to just kind of talk about what was happening in the moment, what was the reaction, the emotion that was behind it. And then I provided a framework around neuroscience for the second session, where we were able to take all of those kind of messy, uncomfortable feelings and reactions and see, okay, our brain is kind of acting up like this. And how is the other person's brain acting up? And so if you were to make these choices, what impact would it have on your brain? What impact would it have on their brain? Like that. So it kind of grounded the conversation. And then after that, we were able to come up with something real creative. And so for her, she actually was able to fulfill the goal of having a more equitable space to work in, because we were able to come up with a strategy that really connected to her value of fairness. And for me, I realized that, wow, even in moments where I'm challenged as a coach, that my process, if I can just be in the moment, acknowledge that there's hurt, find a way to ground it in some connect with the person, and then we can be more creative on the other side. I kind of came up with a way to triage for myself. So it was a big aha moment. And I shared it with her in one of our last sessions. I'm like, thank you so much for teaching me. But it was huge. And I noticed, and I'm going to ask this question later on, but I noticed that when we talk about anything around diversity, equity, and inclusion these days, it's tense, it's tight, it's very heady. You know, there's all this facts and figures and numbers and social justice, and we don't engage the heart so much. And I saw myself go there, even in that one-on-one situation where I was like, oh, I need to acknowledge the emotion that's happening right now, and then allow that emotion to guide us to the brain, and then the brain to guide us to something creative.
And great story. Thank you.
Yeah.
You still want to hear mine? Okay, so
I mean, is it as good? I'm kidding.
It's exactly the same.
The same.
Yeah.
Izzy was the person.
That's right. So there's a game called one word at a time story, where people make up a story in sequence, one word at a time. It'd be fun to play here. I was running a workshop, and there was a group of 5 people at a table, and each table, they're telling a story, the same story. And in the debrief, so I would ask the people, what was your response? What would you learn about yourself? And a woman raised her hand and she said, I wasn't good for my team. Why not? Well, I took too long to come up with my word. Well, I said, I remember the saying, I purposely said there is no time limit on this game. It's not, you don't have to come up fast. She said, I heard you, but I didn't believe you, because nothing in my life has no time frame to it. And then this is the moment I could see the light bulb go up in her head, where she said, oh my goodness, now I realize why my direct reports are so nervous when I come into the office. Wow. Because she realized she carries a sense of urgency with her when it's not necessary. And what she was able to see, we had a great discussion about who we are when we show up impacts other people.
Wow. That's huge.
That is, yeah. That's the power of this work, I think, is that I don't have to, I ask questions. People make their own insights if they're willing to do it.
It's the power of connection. Vanessa, you don't get away with just asking it. So you got to
answer it too.
Yeah, you can do both.
Sure. I have one off the top of my head. As y'all were sharing, I was thinking about it. So I studied music and I studied voice. And during my college time, I had a student for my voice pedagogy class. And she was not a trained musician or anything. She was just someone I found off of Craigslist who would come in, and I'd be, heavily documenting and being graded on, how pedagogical my approach was with teaching voice, right? But a lot of the exercises that I was doing with her was very physical and about breath. A lot of it about breath and about taking up space and like expanding so that you're taking in more breath, because breath to the vocal folds is what creates voice. So if your breath isn't in check, then, that's the number one thing that's going to really help with singing. And she did improve, and it was really cool to see her voice improve, but she said something else at the end that I didn't expect, which was that she told me that by taking the lessons with me, that it made her realize how much in her life, since having moved to Boston, because that's where we were at the time, she had made herself small and didn't want to take up space. So much so that when she would come into these lessons with me week after week, and me constantly telling her to take up space, she realized that she was allowing herself to take up more space in her everyday life now. I just thought that was so cool.
That's beautiful.
It really is.
Wow. I can imagine that some of these experiences, I take for granted how much impact we make on people. I don't know if you guys are the same, but it doesn't have to be anything huge. Sometimes it so happened that we were in the space of the expert in those situations, the educator. And I can imagine that someone just observing you, or maybe somebody listening right now, could have a big insight for themselves. And so I don't take for granted that people are growing and learning around me if I allow myself to actually follow my heart and follow my instinct in that moment. And I think, it doesn't have to be crafted for it to be effective.
Oh, I love that.
It's about who you are and
Yeah.
how you show up. And that's a thread through all of our stories.
Immediately, it makes me think of something. It's a saying that I can't remember it exactly, but basically you do not have to, it's the ideology that you do not have to create some sort of big thing or change the world in this revolutionary way to have made a difference. And when I hear that and think about that, I do truly think that even something as small as a personal revolution, one of just truly owning yourself and being yourself and loving yourself in your life, can be enough to really help people around you. And I do think that is something that we tend to undervalue about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have all the time thought about, I'm trying, why, this is for me. I can do this for me. And, I said recently to someone, we were all born with different size feet. Find shoes that are comfortable to you. Like, just walk your walk, walk in the shoes that are made for you, that make you feel good, that make you look good, that make you walk the way you want to walk. And that it would be so not only dull, but some completely ineffective living if all of us wore the same type shoes, although all of us were different sizes. Like, can you imagine someone wearing high heels when they have flat arches, or somebody having to stuff their feet because they're a size 7, but they're wearing size 12 shoes? Like, how ridiculous that is. So
what if? What
if? Cool. Izzy, do you have a question?
Vanessa, tell me something about you that most people don't know.
Oh, goodness. I feel like I'm such an open book. What do most people not know? That's a hard one.
Like, we don't know you that well, so you can basically say anything.
I think something that surprises people is learning about my anxieties or insecurities, only because, and I only learned this recently, I don't actually view myself as a bombastic or forward personality. But apparently sometimes I come off that way. Someone who's just really bold and really confident. And it can be surprising to people to learn that I have, like my own fears and anxieties that are very prevalent, that, I have to work through all the time. So like knowing that maybe I'm worried about the quality of like my performances or my art or my work, or knowing that I struggle with feeling disappointed in myself sometimes, or knowing that I'm really like afraid of the things that I can't control, can be really surprising for people to learn sometimes.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, beautiful. May I answer that question too?
Please.
Well, some of it kind of harkens back to some of the things that you just shared, Vanessa, but I think for me, I work in the corporate world, right? Often in working with people from all levels of the organization, and I've been doing it for a long time. And I second guess myself every time I have to present something that is strictly just, this is Valerie's heart, this is my emotion, or this is my spiritual belief, not because it's couched in any sort of religious subtext, right? But it's just, for example, we were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion is kind of work I've been doing more and more often. And I really struggled when I was requested a few times, a few years back, to come and do workshops or something like that in this topic, because I'm like, I just don't think that just dealing with history and facts and figures is going to cut it for me. And one, I'm not good at retaining that information. Two, I don't think it makes any significant change in people's hearts, right? So how do I get the two to match up? And so there's always a lot, I've second guessed myself so many times on, teaching facts, figures, history, the law concepts versus like actually just connecting with people in meaningful ways. And it's a battle that I struggle with pretty much in every single conversation I've had around that. Like, is it good enough just to connect with people? It's usually the question. Is that enough? Do people care about that enough? Is that as easy as it sounds? Is it as impactful as I think it is? Like that. So I think people would be surprised because I devote a lot of my time and energy doing just that, that it would be like, she would never question it. But I'm like, I question it all the time.
Can I ask like a clarifying question on that?
Totally. Yeah.
Is it this idea of can I see this thing as valuable if it's not quantifiable?
Kind of. I don't know if necessarily if it needs to be quantified per se, but I don't even know how to express it. But I think for me, a lot of it is I've traveled. I use empirical evidence all the time. I'm just going to label it. So most of it is like, this is just my experience in living life, what I know best, what I've seen other people do that seem to work. And that's a level of reality that I feel most comfortable working with. And so what I have to train myself to do when I have these moments of, is not so much that I need to give like a percentage of people think X, Y, Z, but I just like, well, how many of you feel this way? And if you don't, cool. If you do, just check it. And so it doesn't have to be like quantifiable per se, but it does I have to figure out, is it relevant? Maybe that's what I struggle with. Is this relevant? Especially if the people that I'm working with or talking to want more facts and want more like justification for why. And like, I don't think that's really important. I don't know if that landed, but that's what came to mind when you were asking that question.
If I'm going to bring this to the improv world, what I heard you saying was that you're trying to predict the end of the story instead of just telling the story. Everybody take, your questions are from Esther Perel. It's all about relationships, and in relationships, what you say gets translated to the person's love languages, or so it's very much in the work that I do and that you do, and it is very much about, you have a process, you have a plan, and you make an offer. Mm-hmm. And the offer is you and the context in which you put it in. If people need more, then it's their choice to ask for more. Mm-hmm. And not everybody is going to get it. So I think, that's another way that improv has helped me, where I've been able to let go of trying to please everybody. Yeah. Yeah, because so far it has not worked. And the act alone has turned people off.
And I do think that a little bit has to do with how I've learned to be more and more open. I think as I've been more open, people are usually more open to receiving what I have to offer too. Like even the children in my life, I don't have any kids, but I have 9 nieces and nephews. And I underestimate how much they care about someone asking them about their life and their hobbies and just being silly with them, right? Although I don't see them very often, I don't buy them a bunch of gifts. That's just not my style. And I guess I'm like, man, I wish maybe I needed to buy something instead. But I'm like, no, actually, they really enjoyed it and they talk about it, right? So there are these kind of.
Yeah, you're so human.
No.
Can I ask Vanessa a question?
Sure.
So my question, I know for myself this, but I'm curious as to how has improv and the work that you do, the performances of, what have you learned about your vulnerability? I mean, because you have to be kind of vulnerable. And I think what brought to mind was Valerie, what you were discussing was about the vulnerability of who shows up. So I'm curious, Vanessa, about how, how has this vulnerability recognition evolved for you through the work that you do, improv and the others?
So first off, I just want to say I feel like I'm a pretty odd duck when it comes to what drew me to improv and my experience with it. Because in a lot of ways, I feel like improv is coming home. And it's not necessarily that thing that I'm doing just to grow or expand myself. It's the thing that I do that nourishes me. And it's kind of always felt that way. So like, it's kind of funny. I'm like trying to think, when do I want to start if I go on the timeline? When myself and my siblings were kids, we used to essentially make up improv games and do improv with each other just as kids. That was the kind of games that we would play. We're all very neurodiverse kids that came up with really interesting games to play, like the one person sits in a chair and we do absurdist humor until the other person laughs, and see how long you can hold out, or creating odd scenarios and building out a scene and things like that. So it was something that's very natural to me. And we were all such huge fans of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Ever since I was little, even to now. And when I got into school for the first time for college, because I actually didn't do theater or any of that during grade school, because I was homeschooled for a long time, and then I was in a tiny private school. So when I went to college and I was finally taking theater classes, I really went into it with this idea and this hunger for liberation. I wanted that so much. I was a very pent up, repressed person. And my first experience in person with improv was actually non-comedic acting improv. And I remembered, like, class after class, it was just like doors and windows opening up for me. I felt so liberated. It was so great. And I remembered it was a lot of it for me. I guess I was just ready to just name the things that I was afraid of, and to just jump in and to just own who I was in those moments, to allow myself to push past boundaries. I think that over time, getting older, that's become harder. And so I do have to push myself to still go just as far as I had initially. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. You talked about this story is clear. Improv fortified you to the point of transforming your vulnerability. I mean, like you said, you found it, and it freed you from that. So that was exactly that. That was a very clear answer. So thank you.
Yeah. And I guess one thing to add on top of that too, I feel like it unlocks my idea maker inside. Like, even when I'm away from improv, if I'm currently engaged in it on like a regular basis, my ability to come up with new ideas is just expounded.
I think people, I don't know, I shouldn't say people, I don't have a way to quantify this, but my impression of the people that I've talked to about it is that we take for granted how much of life is improvisational. Exactly. Like, it's constantly improvisational. You don't have to take a course to do it. I was with
driving is improvisational. If you pass somebody, you're affecting hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the lanes behind you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our interaction in the cash register, our interaction with the children in our lives, like, it's constant. You're responding to whatever stimulus, right? I remember one day going to a grocery store, and I can't remember what prompted me to start thinking this way, but the conversations are usually pretty predictable. It's like, hi, how's your day? Welcome to whatever store, and back and forth. And then how much you pay, and you're off. Well, I remember that I walked up, it was my turn, and the cashier asked, oh, welcome. How are you doing today? And I was just like, my feet are killing me. I have these new boots and they're really cute, but they're painful. And we just had this great laugh. And I think for the first time in a while, I just realized how simple it was. And it was like a, 2-minute, 3-minute exchange, paid for my stuff and I left. But I'm like, I need to do this more often because it breaks things up for me and for the other person. And I'll share one last example. I remember this guy who I thought was really cute, also a cash register. and he said, same thing, like, hey, how are you? How's your day? And I'm like, oh, it's going pretty well. How's your day? He goes, well, anytime a hot chick comes through my line, I have a good day, or something like that. And the first thought I had was like, all right, I'm like 15, like hot chick, like who talks like that to a grown woman? Judgment. But then I was just like, actually, that was a compliment. Okay. So I was like, wait, am I the hot chick? So it took me a moment to just kind of like, okay, give that up, just be with this. And it was so great. We went out a couple times, but it was wonderful.
Bold. I love his boldness.
But I would have totally shut it down had I not just decided I'm just going to, yes, and this moment and just be with whatever he said. It was
exactly
fascinating. Izzy, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Vanessa kind of alluded to this. You were talking about as we get older, right? We have an instinct to want to maybe have a little bit more control or exert a little bit more control over things. And I'm curious for you, Izzy, with your contemporaries, what are you like in a group of your peers, of your generation? Are you hanging out with other people who are in improv, or like, what are you noticing as you grow older as well? How flexible you are, how much commitment you make to being open?
One of the things about Zoom is that I get to play with improv people around the world a couple of times a week, and my own workshops. And they are, very age diverse.
Cool.
So I think that what I find is that different groups, like with different groups of friends, you have different topics to talk about. So for people, I would talk to people in their 70s and 80s to find out what age, what's the secret, to if they what they say basically is have an interest in something, have a spiritual connection to something, and have a purpose, and play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that I've been fortunate that the work that I do is not sequential. So it's not like I sort of moving through the life, and the conveyor belt is, oh God, I see the end, the end of the tunnel of love coming up. It's like we're going in a circle. I keep going around. Oh yeah, this is good. I think the biggest change is because I've been a facilitator so long, and I started out as a special ed teacher. I did stand-up comedy, improv, and the speaking. I have been around a lot of people for a long time of different ages. So that's really, it doesn't come up very much, except that, physically I notice some differences.
Yeah.
But that's true of people in their 40s and 30s also. So
Very true. I want to shift a bit of our conversation now, because as we're coming towards the end of our time together,
the end of the conveyor belt.
The end of the conveyor belt is near. I'm curious about what this experience has been like for the two of you. The conversation we've had so far, like reflections on our last, 45 or so minutes together.
It's nice jumping in and immediately talking about things on a deeper level. It's kind of my preference in terms of hanging out with people.
I would go out on another date.
Dude, swipe right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think as you mentioned, I would like to get to know Vanessa a little bit more, and we can certainly stay offline, connect offline. And this is good. My partner, who's an artist, she had said to me, "What are you going to talk about?" And I don't know. Who are you talking to? I don't know. So we watched a couple of your things. She says, "What are you going to bring?" Because the ones that we saw, and I said, "I don't know." Actually, I do know. Slinky.
Oh, well, now that you brought it up, you got to tell us why Slinky.
Well, it's play. It's a toy. It's
Hey.
it works for a lot of things. So this is great. I think that, it's an example of, even through Zoom, that connective energy can happen. Yeah. So it was good. I would. Time went fast.
I know, same. Went by so fast.
That's because you guys brought it. You brought some good stuff. What are you taking away from this conversation? Insights, ahas, questions, anything? What are you taking away from this?
I think it's really easy to get stuck in a rut of being really hard on yourself. And just a reminder to myself to not be that way. And particularly the time that we shared of realizing how maybe something little we said had a good impact on someone else, just to remember those things, celebrate the little things too.
Celebrate the little things.
I have this feeling that there's a line of dialogue or a process. I think it's called Unhurried Conversations, where the people get together without a topic for a certain amount of time, and nobody has to say anything, but people say whatever they want. They don't have to stick to a topic or something. And I have that feeling here, in that the reminder for me is that not having an agenda is the best agenda.
Not having an agenda is the best agenda.
I like that.
I live with that. I kind of roll that way. Yeah. A lot. In my head, I might have a loose agenda, but I don't generally write it. Okay.
Well, yeah, boundaries are, we have time boundaries, we have, other boundaries, but without having the agenda, I thought your structure, Valerie, the way you put it in is really, it's a nice container.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for playing in the container. I have one last game, actually.
Oh.
It's not necessarily an improv game per se in the classical sense, but I did order recently, and I got this week a set of cards called the Shift Deck. I don't know if you can see this. Have you heard of this, the Shift Deck?
I might have.
No, I haven't.
From Conscious Leadership. I just got them, and I'm like, I feel like you guys are the perfect people to play this with, because I've not used them yet. And so I have here a set of cards. They're like little slivers of paper, basically, or cards. So I fanned them out like this. And what I'd like to do is run my fingers across and have one of you, we'll start with Vanessa, have you say when, and I'll stop, and that's your card, and whatever it says on the card, you will do. So for example, one of the cards says, and I'm just going to pick one from, I split the cards, there are like way too many to fan. This one says, a playful way to get unstuck. Oh no, those are the instructions. That's not it. Okay, this one says, speak from the opposite point of view for 1 minute. Right, for example. So that's like one of the cards in here, just to give you a sense of what that is. So tell me when to stop, and that'll be your card.
Stop.
All right, this one says, make a sound that fully expresses how you're feeling right now for 15 seconds. No words. That's not 15 seconds.
I just imagined. Wait. Oh.
Go ahead.
I just imagined like bubbles.
Bubbles. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Izzy, it's up to you. Your turn. Tell me when.
Now.
All right. Here's the card.
I can't say it. Yeah.
For 2 minutes, argue for why you can't have what you really want. For 2 minutes. Well,
Are you keeping time? You keeping time?
I'll keep time. Let's just do 1 minute for the sake of
Okay.
it. For 1 minute, I want you to argue for why you can't have what you really want. Go.
People don't understand me. They keep putting these boundaries and assuming that I want things because I'm selfish, but really I want things so that if I'm happy, I impact a lot of people, and I want to spread the joy. And just because I have unusual taste doesn't mean that I don't have relevance to a lot of other people. And I know that's a lot of people come from the position of you have to suffer and the life is bad and pain. And I understand there's physical difficulties about eating candy all the time or ice cream as a main course, but it's just I am a really connected hedonist in terms of I want my pleasure to go everywhere. And there's the saying that about the happier the person in your life is that you're connected to, the happier you are. Well, I'm going to reverse that. The happier I am, the happier everyone else will be. And I just don't understand why that argument does.
Woo! Well done. Well done. All right. So we got bubbles and we got hedonist. All right. I'm going to pick one just for fun in the last few moments that we have. Okay. So I'm just going to I'll run my finger. You guys are going to choose for me. So I'll just stop whenever you say when. Okay. So one of you tell me when to stop.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
When?
This one. All right. 30 seconds while ranting about your issue. Move your legs in a way they've never moved before.
I'll keep time. Ready?
Ranting about my issue. All right. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that today of all days, I decided to do this improvisational thing. And I'm trying so many things right now that I feel a little crazy. I've been getting really hot today.
Keep going.
I can't believe that you guys have been so welcoming. And now everybody thinks I'm crazy, and they'll probably stop watching this podcast by the time this thing comes out, because they're like, who is the crazy lady moving her legs so nutty? And then all these changes that Valerie's making on this podcast, like pick something and stick with it.
You didn't know 30 seconds was so long, huh?
I didn't. I got a workout though, man. That was
good. I could put that in one of my Zoom workshops.
There you go. I welcome you too. Guys, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for saying yes and bringing yourselves, actually coming to play, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Sharing so deeply.
Nice to meet you, Vanessa.
It was so nice meeting you, Izzy. And thank you, Valerie.
Yeah. Let's connect on LinkedIn or somewhere.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. We will stay connected, and I'll make sure that I send you guys your contact info if you don't think you already have it, but that will be a good way. And for anyone that's been tuning in, I also, if Izzy and Vanessa, if you're okay with it, we'll put your contact information in there too, or some social media handle perhaps, where they could follow and find you, because I have a feeling that you're going to get some fans after the conversation of the things that you shared today. So thank you so much for that. The rest of you, thank you so much for tuning in once again to this episode of Not Quite Strangers. Please make sure that you rate us on the podcast platform that you listen to us on. Thumbs up. If you have a comment for Izzy or for Vanessa, it always means so much for us. As Vanessa, we mentioned, right? To hear, like, what do people take away from this? What impact has it made? Let us know in the comments. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Vanessa and Izzy, you guys stick around.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the podcast Not Quite Strangers. Be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite video or podcast platform. And for more information and content, go to notquitestrangers.com. See you next time.